Welcome to Horticulture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture. Fun fact, we listened to that intro as we get ready for the podcast, and it'll never not feel weird to hear myself do that intro. But anyways, welcome to Horticulture, y'all.
I didn't hear the intro.
Shut up.
I promise I didn't. I promise you, I did not hear it.
Oh.
Well, we can add it in. We can add it in after. It's not a problem, but
well, I heard it, and I usually hear it on when we record. So I don't know what that's about, but
everything else looks fine, so I'm sure it's fine.
As you can probably figure out by this point, we are filling in for Ray and Jessica, who are out for, again, various reasons, various wonderful reasons, but they will be back with us soon, and I am covering the technical part of things, and or if something goes wrong, it is my fault. So we're rolling with it. We're rolling with the punches here, guys, because that's what horticulture is, just rolling with the seasons, rolling with the punches. Yeah.
It kind of felt like you slipped into like a sales kind of pitch energy there for a second.
I've got my marketing energy today.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. It's all about
how come? What do you think that's from? I'm
still just reeling on, the past season of trying to get things out the door, and I got to teach. I think I've talked about this already, but then I taught my first CCD marketing course this kind of last quarter, and that was really exciting.
About? Where were you teaching it? How many people? How excited were they?
Now that you've asked, I've immediately forgotten everything. But it was choosing your market. So market
exploring
opportunities,
markets, thinking
exploring
about those.
Markets. Are you a wholesale girly or are you a retail girly? What are we talking about? And I was in Bullitt County. So shout out to Nathan. We appreciate you. And I had over 20 people, I believe. So, and they hung with me for a solid 2 hours. Bless their hearts. And they also hung out afterwards, which I think means that I did a good job because they had lots of questions after. So
people tell me I have a voice for retail and a face for wholesale. I don't know what that.
Because in wholesale you're like a stern businessman, and you have that you have the good businessman face. That's what it is.
I see. Not because they wanted to keep me in the back. The loading dock is where as close as we want you to get to customers.
Not at all. We all know that's not true.
Well, so I have a little mini hack it's not really that big of a hack, but so we recently or this past year we planted some trees, fresh new trees, and in the ground. I need to qualify that for myself, because all of my other ones are in little tiny pots, but they're in the ground. And I was trying to figure out a way. We've talked about before with trees, you kind of want to give them a slow, gradual watering, but deeply, periodically.
Right.
And so they sell these tree bag things where you can fill up these things, and it's like a donut shape kind of. You put it around the tree, and then it'll slowly drip out water. You can also obviously get drip tape. And I'm not an overly frugal person, but I've been trying to challenge myself to not buy new things if I can try to figure out something else, just for various reasons. And so I had this old brewing bottling bucket from when I was brewing beer. If you're not familiar with that, it's also what's that?
I remember that phase of your life.
Yeah, it was a different time. And so it's like this, got a little spigot on it. People will actually use them for a hand washing station sometimes at farmers markets for sampling or whatever. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to use this. And so I take the little bucket out there. I sit it at the edge of where I'm going to water, on the mulch thing, fill it up with some water. And then I just turn that spigot on so that it just lets out a little bit of water, just a little flow.
I love it.
Thank you.
It's only in one spot. Are you moving the bucket around occasionally?
Yeah.
Or every time you water, it's a different side of the tree?
Yeah, different side of the tree each time.
Okay.
They're pretty small trees.
Yeah, they're not blueberries, so it's not as important.
Correct.
Blueberries have no root hairs, if anybody was interested.
Brazilian waxed blueberry roots.
That's
um,
one way to think about it.
yeah, it's how I'm thinking about it. It's how I'm choosing to think about it.
That's how we
But
all are going to think about it from now on.
but yeah, I what else is I don't know if there's anything were we talking about what's going on with us right now?
Were we? I was just saying like some of the things that I have been up to this past quarter, and that was one of an exciting thing with
That's right.
CCD
That's right.
that I
That's
have
right.
been up to. Yeah, yeah. And you've been now the CCD team. The rest of the CCD team has been up to something pretty cool. We've talked a little bit about, but like I feel like we should brag
So
a
this
little
is we're
bit
just sort
more.
of blending our normal structure of intro and the thing.
Yes, why not?
Oh man,
If you're
Ray and
watching.
Jessica leave, and it's just chaos. Alexis is just I'm not giving her enough structure to push back against.
What structure? What is structure? Who
Yeah, I
it's just a
know.
concept.
What did you say
Time is
last
just a
episode?
concept.
Something like by the book? And I was like, mm-mm.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should, remember?
Yeah. So we're talking. We want this episode to be a little bit of an informal reflection on the first part of the year, both the growing and weather and all that kind of fun stuff, but also a little bit about what's stuff that's coming from us from CCD, um, and maybe stuff that you're seeing right now in your plants or in
Mhm.
your markets that is a product of this last little period of time. Does that sound like what we talked about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it can be, a little bit of what you might be seeing in your garden, as well as, yeah, what kind of just some cool stuff and stuff we've been working on that's coming up, which
Hmm. Hmm.
I am finding exciting. And I'm forcing myself to find exciting because right now it's just stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you were offering I don't know what the term in improv is, but some sort of thing that I was supposed to pick up that I instead just dropped.
A
Yes, we
segue. I
have
was
been
offering you a segue.
as there's probably some cool term. If you have any improv people, just let us know.
Drop it in the comments. 5 stars.
Yeah,
This is what you should have said.
handback or something. I don't know, but the we've had a program for a number of years called Marketing for All, which is this training program for marketers. And the idea is that it kind of is 101, 201 level content. And we've been doing it since 2017 in different forms and formats. And this past year, um, my colleagues came up with the idea and have really, owned it. I had started the program originally, but they've really taken it to this next level. We did this 6-week session, and it was 2 weeks in February, all of March, and then 2 weeks in April with the same between 12 and 15 people in the same place
Mhm.
each week. So there was 6 sessions. They were 2 hours each across this whole 6-week window. We covered all of these different topics related to branding and marketing and some of the technical side on photography and graphic design and that kind of thing. And it was a really cool, rewarding experience. One that I know last episode we talked a little bit about how in a bouquet of peonies you're seeing something that was started as a rhizome or whatever 3 years before maybe, or a seed for other things, a seed 6 months before. In that case, it was a grant that was written in January of 2024 was what funded and then led to the. So we had those cycles in this crazy weird academic and
Yeah.
nonprofit world as well. But it was a really cool, a lot of hard work, a lot of energy and thought, and we have a lot of good evaluation stuff that we're going to be able to use to even improve it a little bit more. But that was a big part of our initial push. Usually, stuff kicks off for us right after or pretty close after the new year
Mhm.
with the fruit and vegetable conference. But we didn't have that. We didn't end up having that this year, Alexis. What ended up happening?
Yeah, that big ol' ice storm came through, and we were like, "We can't ask people to drive hours and hours to a conference. That is not safe." So we pivoted hard. And I think it was the first cancellation ever in the, 30 years this has been going on? 20 years, something like that. The Fruit and Vegetable Conference has been happening, but it was absolutely the right move there. So we pivoted online into videos. So that was an interesting take. And one thing, yeah. Any thoughts on like that from fruit and veg? I mean, that it just feels like it was a year ago, even though it was a couple months ago, and we're still like looking at data and planning based on that. Like we just the cut flower working group extension group met today actually and talked about what we saw based on the videos we did and the Zoom talks that we did to kind of like make up for that with people and what we wanted to do pushing forward. So like we're already planning for next January for that based on feedback and more feedback we want to get. But so that's sort of where I'm thinking, but it feels like that was literally a year ago and it was just a couple months.
I mean, it is May, almost June, almost
Yeah.
half a year ago.
I feel like I'm in we've kind of completed what we needed to get through and now we're back into planning stage. I feel like that's where I'm coming up on my 1 year anniversary of being at starting at CCD. So
Woo!
this is my first experience as a CCD person in May, and that's been interesting. But I'm excited. I want to tell you, I'm just gonna jump the gun. So um a mechanical weed control field day, the first Kentucky mechanical weed control field day, which is based off of a field day in the Midwest that's been happening for many years that I was able to go with some other technical advisors from Oak and take some farmers and some cool people up there thanks to some SARE monies. So thank you, Brett and SARE, for those monies. But we were able to go up and see some really cool uh, equipment that people can use, whether they're organic or not, for weed control. And I mean, we saw everything from like, $100,000 plus robots that weed your fields, really large tractors, all the way down to just some new cool hand tools that are available. And we said, you know what? We have a lot of new growers. We have a lot of, mid to experienced growers who maybe are ready to level up, but need more help in they want to level up, but they don't have enough people or funding to hire more people for weed control, stuff like that. And we want to focus on specialty crops instead of because we also saw things for corn. So we are doing the Kentucky Mechanical Weed Control Field Day on September 23rd at the Horticulture Research Farm in Lexington. And so I am putting a shameless plug out there that if you are interested in that, we are going to have it'll be an all day thing. We'll have lunch available. So in the future, I'm working on getting a registration page up. You can sign up and register, and we'll drop that in the show notes in the future. But if that sounds cool to you and you'd like to know what's available out there from hand tools all the way up to some larger four-wheel tractor devices for specialty crops, we are going to have a field day that you can come like see all that stuff. You can try a lot of that stuff as well, and I'm really excited about that, and I've got a cool team I'm working with to plan. So shameless plug.
Well,
What
why
look at September.
why might someone want to mechanically control weeds?
Because
Well, you say control weeds, you mean
yeah,
kill them or
yeah,
generally slow them down to such an extent that they don't become a problem for you.
yeah, yeah,
And then
because
you're going to do it mechanically. What is that like? You're just sort of going through the motions, no light in your eyes anymore. It's just mechanic, or is there something? I don't know. What does that mean, and why would you maybe
mechanical
want to do it?
versus like spraying. So a lot, specialty crops cannot be sprayed the same way that we have Roundup Ready corn and soybean, for example, right? So you can spray Roundup right on those and kill all the weeds around them, but you don't kill your crop. We don't have that in specialty crops, watermelon, vegetable, flower, whatever. So you got to do weed control somehow. So you can use something like black plastic. You can use mulches. There's lots of different ways, but when it comes down to it, doesn't really matter what form you're using. You're going to do some sort of weed control. And in our world, I think a lot of it ends up being by hand. At least for a lot of cut flower farmers, I know a lot of it is by hand. Um, which is a form of mechanical for sure. But if you're wanting to elevate that to maybe a walk behind tractor like a BCS or a Grillo, or maybe you're at a couple acres and you're wanting to cultivate those weeds in between your rows. So you've got 2 rows of lettuce, of head lettuce in a bed, and you can use a something called a finger weeder or a basket weaver to get right up close to those plants and kill all the weeds right up close to them, but not the plant itself. And so it's very helpful for people who are maybe wanting to expand an operation in a way that makes sense for them without a bunch of people. So that would be why I would recommend mechanical weed control. And again, it could be like we'll have people bringing some really cool new hose. So it doesn't have you don't have to be at the scale that you want a 4-wheel tractor, but maybe one day you would, or a 2-wheel tractor even. If you're just at a walk behind wheel hose stage, we'll have some of that. We'll also talk a little bit more about like solarization and things that you can do that don't even necessarily require something with a wheel on it to help with. So I'm very excited. We're planning. It's pretty crazy right now.
That was a really good fill while my microphone stand exploded.
Did
Um,
it just like, did you move it? Or I was trying not to watch you and lose track of what I
I
was
was like
saying.
making a slight adjustment to it and the bass just blew up. So, um, yeah, I think I do think that weed control is like one of those keystone issues of
Hmm.
sustainable agriculture moving forward.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the, I won't call it dirty little secret, but one of the unspoken tricky things with organic agriculture, for example,
Hmm.
is that, herbicides just logistically are a pretty elegant solution to a lot of weed problems.
Yeah.
And in general, if you're not doing mechanical weed control, even if you are, if you're not doing automated or
Hmm.
higher level, you are probably paying a laborer to go out and remove the weeds in some way, or you're using a lot of plastic to
Hmm.
block the weeds from germinating, both of which
Hmm.
have sustainability related concerns, we'll
Hmm.
say. And so I think
Or
it's a
you're,
real, so go ahead.
yeah, or you're tilling the soil like a
Mm.
lot. And we all know how that is for,
We don't all know.
microbiomes. Oh, well, that's a whole other episode now, Brett. So we've
Yeah.
talked about
But
soil before, but
there are people who would be critical and concerned about a lot of tillage and its
mhm,
impact on the soil structure,
mhm,
including the micro and macro life within the soil.
mhm.
Fair to
Yeah.
say? So maybe we can do a hot button issue episode later on, including one talking about
I w-
tillage.
that's yeah, that's a fascinating one. I love that. We should bring on Sarah from Oak and get her kind of point of view, since she works with a lot of organic farmers who are very concerned about their soil health and kind of ways they mitigate that while still having to do tillage because they can't use herbicides, or they want to use less plastic because again,
Right.
sustainability issues of it all. So organic and sustainable are not always synonymous, although that is the goal, I would
Yeah,
say.
there's so
For
many, yeah, so
Yeah.
many interesting
Nobody
tensions
at me
there.
for that. I said that that is the goal, but it's not always synonymous,
Yeah.
okay?
I think anyone who's realistic and serious about the conversation would acknowledge that for sure.
goes
Yeah, I
goes
think,
all the
well,
ways.
and like within certified organic standards, almost all of the systemic herbicides are not allowed. And
Mhm,
so organic producers don't have the option of going out and spraying some dicamba or some
mhm,
Roundup or 2,4-D or whatever it may be, onto, and they're also the genetic engineering component of
mhm.
a Roundup ready corn or soybeans or whatever. Again, not allowed.
Right.
Therefore, as a result, you can't do the same thing. And so that's part of the reason why the partnership with Oak, but it's also something that is really, really useful and um, a smart thing for any producer pretty much to be thinking about.
Oh,
And in
yeah.
Kentucky, we have so much water that like weeds are a major issue for us that,
Mhm.
it's,
It's
I would,
bad.
yeah.
It's real
bad.
bad, and it comes
It's
up through the
bad.
plastic a lot of times. Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing worse than you lay beautiful plastic, which is a feat in itself. If anybody has ever had to or have seen, the plastic rose, and you plant everything in it, and it's looking great, and like 2 weeks later, yellow nut sedge is popping its way up through. It busts through because it's so pointy. It'll bust right through that plastic, and you just look down the row, beautiful, beautiful, and then it's like hair has just grown practically overnight in your in your plastic bed, and it is so frustrating.
Mm.
I don't know if you all ever had that at the farm, but that I've seen some things,
Well,
and it's just
so the one, I believe it's the CSA fields at the organic
mm,
CSA fields at the farm before they became certified organic, and even before when they were used for other reasons in the past, a number of years ago, they were historically used, I believe, as the like weed control test fields.
oh
And so they
no.
would literally sow noxious weeds in that field
Oh,
to then test and see if herbicides or different,
right.
mechanisms,
Which is
whatever
great. Like that's
worked.
needed research, like
Yeah.
by
But if
all
you're
means.
talking about an area that you cannot subsequently then use herbicide on and you're trying to grow vegetables, it's a whole thing.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. So,
Yeah.
even more props given to the CSA crew who manage it.
Yeah,
Bless their heart.
I believe that I was told that, or maybe just confirmed that by JD Green, who would know.
The weed specialist, or was the
The
weed specialist.
Yeah,
He retired
he was the
after
guy.
30
So
plus
yeah,
years.
he was
So,
like, "Oh yeah, long time ago, he
and
used to
then
do this."
laughed and laughed as they tried to control the weeds.
Dang, JD, I didn't know. Um, yeah, so let's see. Well, this year, I mean, is 2025 is the 25th anniversary of the UKCCD,
Holla.
known by several different names across time. But hopefully, if you follow the Center for Crop Diversification on Facebook or on Instagram, you've seen some of the posts celebrating things or explaining some of our backstory or some of the people who used to work here. We've been doing that. We're also going to be putting together, or we have been working with our ag communications folks to put together a video. We're going to have a little bit of a party for us and some of our partners to celebrate.
It's mostly for
Um,
us.
yeah, mostly for us. So that, but that's and at the end of last year, we did in this is something where I didn't know the term in improv, but in the world of web design, they would call it a sprint, where we had everybody kind of working and pushing toward developing the new CCD website, which is launched. And so if you haven't gone on there and checked it out yet, it's ccd.uky.edu.
And it's pretty awesome, if I do say so
Hey,
myself.
what's your fit? Like a lot of it's similar. There's we didn't want to get rid of any of the things that were useful about the old format, but they were updating like the type the system that we use,
Mhm.
the Drupal platform, and so we
We
had to
had to
update
get
it
a
or they
new.
would delete
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But so what are you most excited about as far as any of the new stuff on that?
I really love, as a person who like likes to have, information kind of quickly and at my fingertips to compare before I like do a hyper fixation on something. I really love that we pulled out some infos like specifically on the crops, but also on the markets. Kind of, I mean, crops, markets, a bunch of this stuff of just the highlight, like the elevator speech of whatever that thing was. And what I mean to say is, and we base this off of, if you had taken the Hort Biz quiz, we talk about land, labor, capital. And so, like, what crop would be right for you based on the amount of land, labor, capital that you might have. And so we sort of pulled out these highlights, and maybe that's something we can screenshot and use on the Instagram, but uh, of if you want to go look up watermelon, kind of right on that page, very simple. Hey, if you have plenty of area and blah 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 and these types of markets, watermelon is for you. And so before you spend a lot of time looking into the budgeting of it and all of the things that go along with watermelon, you can see up front, you know if you have enough land labor capital for something like watermelon, as well as like some disadvantages of it, how much space it takes up or the markets that you have to hit for it. If you like Asian vegetables is a great one that we have some info on. And, one of the things we say is if you're not in a very like urban diverse market, sales can be hard for something like that. And so, right up front, oh, well, I live in a rural area. So maybe that's not the crop for me. And so I just like that we had done something like that personally from the way I've used the site in the past.
Yeah, I
There's a
really
lot of
like
cool things, but that
yeah,
one
I really
comes to
like the
mind.
way that like the new dynamic content has been working.
Mm-hmm.
So we have these like I guess we call them news stories.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of like a blend. Some of it's news, some of it is almost like a blog post. Sometimes it's just featuring a particular resource, or it's something along those lines, and then those come together to form a newsletter. But it just allows it to me. It feels like a much more modern
Mm,
approach to updates and information. In that we still have our newsletter that you can sign up for to get every month via email, and you can still follow us on social media and get updates there. You can go to the site and you can see the stuff there. And all three of those work together to
mm-hmm.
share information in a way that it's like we tell people to do this for their businesses. And
Yeah.
now we are actually doing the thing that we say, which feels nice.
Yeah.
And it just the old platform didn't really work for that, and we are at the mercy of whatever's available to
Mm-hmm.
us from the university. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and
that's
it,
the thing
it
about
does it
that.
gives it a voice to something, like because the members of CCD are usually the ones writing it, and so I might, for me, I might be talking about the irrigation videos and the irrigation stuff that yeah, you just go click on that page and follow along, but it's sort of like me giving a voice to like if you're doing this, I love using this publication, or this video is really helpful for specifically this kind of stuff. Um, and an occasional cute picture of my dog might pop up as part of the irrigation photo, so or the cover crop photo or whatever it is. But yeah, I like that it feels a little bit more in tune with that we work with people, and we talk to people, and I feel like it talks to people better.
Yeah. Well, in I guess in January or February, we did this. That's conference season. There's a lot of different conferences
Hmm.
we were at. We went to the Oak Conference and did a really cool presentation with um, Chelsea from High Five and
Hmm.
Kayla from the Kentucky Flower Market about visual merchandising approaches and just kind
Hmm.
of for the real world. That was really cool and fun. And then maybe about a month later, a little more than a month later, we went to the Kentucky Extension Conference.
Oh yeah, we
That was
did.
the
Showed up
second
and
one,
showed
I think.
out.
Yeah, the second one that I had been to. And we led a couple of sessions, participated in a bunch more. What did you all talk about?
uh
Or we were on we were on a thing together. What did we talk about?
Yeah. I would say we as a CCD team presented. So the CCD team talked about ways that we are planning to fit with agents to basically better support them in the county so they can support their growers like boots on the ground. So just you know what we can do to help them further their knowledge and their programming, and ways that we can fit into just kind of like help out, like think like that market ready you talked about, ways that this can fit into their plans of work, and how they can provide that and how to get in contact with us. So uh, it was more of talking about how extension works sort of as a whole and specifically CCD, but how that gets back to the people from from campus and back to the people on actually doing the work. And so that's what we talked about. And then Savannah has been on an episode before, and she's a member of our CCD team. Joined a couple other extension folks in the cut flower world, just kind of talking about the Kentucky industry, how it's grown, how it's changed, what's coming, and what we're doing about it, and got some feedback as again from those agents actually in the counties working with farmers on what they're hearing as being needed and valuable. So that was pretty cool. There was a bunch of really great sessions. I did feel pretty motivated after hearing some of the other things that people are doing. Uh, just the great work that is out there to support and how we can work together. That was good.
So as far as we work supporting a culture and an industry and a communities that work with plants, most of which live outside.
Yeah.
And as a result, they and we are beholden to the weather. How would you comment on 2025 weather wise, like for our grower community?
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
yeah,
I can tell you, I had a talk with a commercial grower today about botrytis, which is a disease that hits. It's a fungal disease that we tend to see in high tunnels because it likes humidity and it likes wet, but we're seeing it everywhere, outside, inside, and at times of year that we don't normally see it too bad. And that's because it's been a very wet spring and it's been a cooler spring than normal. I guess maybe not normal. I have said in the past, it was a very respectable spring. And it was, but the part about it was that we did have so much weather so consistently. It was like every day it rained and it rained a lot. And so a lot of things were flooded. People had fresh crops in the ground, they got washed away, or they rotted, or if they were something that's been in, uh, they all got disease or are getting disease problems. And so we're kind of seeing that the end of that because it's starting to warm up. And a lot of diseases actually thrive in a little bit of those slightly cooler temperatures. So, kind of in the 70s is where they really, really thrive. So yeah, I would say that if you have been to the farmers market and you're wondering why something hasn't been available or maybe doesn't look the way it normally does, the weather was actually not as cooperative from a mostly from a precipitation factor this year as it normally is.
yeah, and for some folks, well within our state and
Hmm.
within our listening radius, which is the entire world.
Duh.
But for some people, like to say that it's been wet is an
Understatement.
understatement. Like
Yeah.
we had some historic flooding in
Yeah.
areas in Frankfurt and some places in Eastern Kentucky, and Eastern
Yeah.
Kentucky continues to have these kind of cycles of flooding and issues there. So like, yeah, I would say rain has been a big part of the
Mhm.
spring story. I think last winter to me was quite cold, and we had like
Mhm.
it got colder earlier, and
Mhm.
but on the flip side, this spring, with the exception of a couple of days in April, we didn't really have a lot of bad cold late.
Yeah, it wasn't like the wild temperature swings that we tend to see where it's like 85 degrees one day and then it drops to, 40 the next day, which I'm not exaggerating. For those of you who live in Kentucky, know I'm
Right.
not exaggerating. But if you're not from here, that is a legit thing that happens in spring. Which is really hard on some of those spring crops. And it's hard on the growers because they're having to harvest really fast if they even are able to harvest everything. And then, yeah, it's wild. And we've talked about apples and just the cycle is weird. But yeah, it was a little bit more consistent. Like it just kind of stayed cool. And we're just getting a kind of a more gradual warm up, which has been nice. But yeah, I would say you're going to in your garden, like if you've had anything in the spring, it could even be your bedding plants, some of your perennial plants. Um, you're going if you haven't already, you might start to see some signs, not signs, symptoms of disease pressure, because that they've already taken part, They're probably going dormant once it gets too warm. They shut those diseases, a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them will shut down. And so, but you're going to see the damage and you're going to see it kind of later. And so often there's nothing you can do about it at that time. You gotta, it's a preventative type thing. So that's just kind of to warn you that it's out there and it's happening. Some of those spring things might lose a lot of their leaves, before July. So don't panic.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be okay.
And in some, like with a year like this year, especially in some places, there's almost nothing you could have done anyway.
Mm-mm.
Like because it's just so
All the
much water
rain.
so frequently that anything you're putting on that's protective, other than moving it inside,
Yeah.
you're
Literally
not really going
shielding
to
it.
keep it. And with like dehumidifiers pulling the moisture
Exactly.
out of
Yeah.
the air,
Yeah.
um, and so it's just one of those things that happens. And I can say there's certain areas of the state where they didn't get hit as hard with rain
Mm-hmm.
and stuff and other
Mm-hmm.
issues, and they're on track with their CSAs and their farmers markets.
Yeah.
And then places where, and it's it's just one of those unfortunate like nuances where it's like, oh, our CSA is behind, yours is, then theirs is already going. Well, it
The
was just a
pocket of
different
storms just didn't hit them.
different
Like,
set of circumstances that
yeah.
went on. But
Or the
yeah,
hail didn't hit them.
um any other reflections so far on, I mean, so we had a
Mm,
couple of uh conversation, round table conversations with some growers about
mm-hmm.
rising costs, and particularly about tariffs and the way that may or
Yeah.
may not impact their businesses. And I think a lot of what I heard was we're not really sure how it's going to play out necessarily, but one of the things people are, concerned about are the rising costs of inputs and how
Yeah.
that could particularly for into the fall and into next year affect it. And it's interesting because things like peat and cocoa coir, there's not really like a domestic source for that. And so,
Yeah.
like,
I
by
mean,
definition, they're an internationally traded product,
right.
as opposed to something like, I don't know, what,
Peat
leather.
bogs filled or formed what, like thousands of years ago plus. So
Yeah.
we can't really just like come up with that. We can come up with alternatives,
Yeah.
hopefully, if needed, and definitely should, because peat bogs are, special. But yeah, it's not a thing that we can do if we
And
tried.
the amount of interfacing that our industries do with these global trade
Mm-hmm.
channels are really variable. So
Mm-hmm.
some groups, some organizations, some farms, it's like very, very in touch and plugged in with
Mm-hmm.
this, and others it's kind of like, well, maybe my trays are going to be more expensive next year, or I'm
Yeah.
not going to be able to get certain
Yeah.
bulbs or certain varieties of seed or something. But it's, yeah, I mean, that's definitely, um, we are grant funded, and so it's
Mm-hmm.
been a wild time for that as far as not knowing if stuff's going to be funded and that kind of thing. That's been part of it, part of our reality. And
Yeah.
but we just keep kind of moving
Trucking towards
forward.
the mission.
Alexis was named outstanding extension specialist for the Kentucky
Oh.
Association of State Extension Professionals. She Yeah, and she's been
Brett
lording
writes a
lording it
really good,
over
he likes
everyone.
to lie.
Mm. I
He
love to lie.
nominated me.
I did take a brief break from lying to write that, but yeah, she's been lording it over us ever since. But we're
I
proud to
basically
have her on
just,
the
yeah,
team.
I just take it with me everywhere, and I bring it out and I put it in the chair next to me as if it was a human. And I'm like, no, no, I'm sorry, that seat's taken. Uh, with, with my award sitting in it.
This is where the award goes. Um,
Do you have an award? When you have an award, you can have a chair.
you can have a chair for it, but not this chair. There are many like it, but this one is mine. So I guess, I mean, you mentioned the 1 year coming up on the 1 year anniversary
Hmm.
working with CCD, and I'm curious. The podcast has kind of been. I mean, there's some continuity to some extent, but like this, it's been the one constant from your old
Hmm.
job to your new one. What's been your, not like, oh, it's good and whatever. Nobody cares about that. I want to know more about like what's been surprising, or how has your role changed or shifted, or like what do you think? How are you thinking differently now than you were
Mm,
before?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think my brain has opened up. So as an agent, you're thinking big picture and at the same time thinking very like micro scale with someone coming in the door with a leaf in their hand and they're saying, "Do you know what's on my maple tree?" Or a grower calling you and saying, "Can you come out and check out my watermelons?" And so, uh, you know, very important things, but affecting one person in that way, and versus what I do now, I think is so much big picture to affect though. Like, but instead of affecting one watermelon farmer, I'm trying to make 100 watermelon farmers, more successful. And so, thinking of it in that range, and then even what CCD does is so much more towards the marketing side, which is, fine. And it's the marketing and budgeting and economics of specialty crops. And there is production obviously involved in what we do, but we are more of the champions. I feel like we're production champions of other people doing the actual like thing. And I mean that like we have a vegetable specialist, we have a fruit specialist, we have these greenhouse specialists, we have all these people who are very specific. And I think CCD is a champion of them and making sure that their information is getting out. Maybe we make cool graphics that make it make sense with the farmers, or we help them market those plants that the vegetable specialist is teaching them how to grow, right? So it's, which is weird for me because as a horticulturist and a plant person, so much of what I did was more on the production side and answering those really production based questions. So I do miss that. I miss teaching more regularly is really nice. I love talking to people about how to do something, and maybe that's just my my need for acceptance and appreciation. I don't know, but so it is much different not being as public facing. But it's been good just to be able to think on a more macro scale of how something can affect a lot of people and what are a lot of people's needs and how do we approach that versus one or two people's needs in a county. So that's been fun. It's been a good change. I think my brain was already working towards that with a lot of the stuff that I was doing, so just kind of accelerated that plan a little bit.
That's an interesting way of framing it. And I think in some ways the way that we think about what we're doing is very
Hmm.
similar to the agents, but the
Hmm.
scale and scope, which is what you're pointing out, is what's
Hmm.
different.
Yeah.
But I think that in the case of a lot of the campus and state-based people, statewide people, it's both the scale and the way they think about it that's different.
Hmm.
And what I'm getting, or what I made me think of is, I want to say that there was a book. It was a book I read many years ago, and it was about a white whale and a man's quest to. No, it wasn't about that. It was
Wrong book.
about
Wrong book.
kind of talking about and imagining a future where college majors are no longer disciplinary, and instead
Mm.
they're organized around like problems or
Mhm.
issues.
Mhm.
So you wouldn't major necessarily in engineering.
Mhm.
You might actually major in something like water.
Yeah.
And so then it's more of an issues based thing. And it makes me think
Mhm.
about the way that we approach stuff is that like the specialist people are very disciplinary. And I mean, obviously we have a disciplinary bent, but we're
Sure.
like so much more oriented to the problems themselves, the concepts
Uh-huh.
and problems themselves.
Yeah.
And even thinking about how to solve them from like a grower perspective, which feels there's like a lot of kinship with the agents in that regard.
Yeah.
But where we don't have a queue of people expecting us to solve their problems right then and there,
Right,
which
exactly.
allows us to think a little more strategically. But that, yeah, I like that. I like the way you described that.
Oh, well, thanks. That is what I have noticed. So it is. I say I'm the horticulture specialist with no specialty
Mm-hmm.
in the department,
Mm-hmm.
because I think they all, except for maybe Sean Wright, although over the years Dr. Wright has been on the podcast before, and he's sort of the specialist of everything that no one else wants to take.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very good at that, of these kind of niche crops and herbicides for specialty crops and stuff. But so he's excellent of that. And that's where I'm kind of like, I don't know what I'm the specialist of, other than they say I'm just the CCD specialist. And I'm like, okay, sure.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think of our last episode and just the way that the real way that most of the enterprises in this state overlap is that they have lots of different components going on
Mm-hmm.
in different ways, and they're
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it as like as a system.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I could think of it's like you're a specialist for horticulture,
So,
farm-based horticultural systems thinking
yeah.
or something
Yeah.
like that, and that's really necessary because the diversity. I mean, there are people who grow just vegetables or grow just one type of vegetable,
Right.
but for every one
And
of
they're,
those, there's dozens who have fruits and vegetables and
yeah.
flowers
Or,
and
yeah. And like even 20 different vegetables, and how many
yeah.
markets are they selling them to? And those are all different, as we've talked about before. And, the last episode talking about different markets and what that means. And yeah, so that feels right. Horticulture systems. I like that. I'm gonna play
Well,
with that.
and I'll say it has just been really wonderful to have you, specifically the person here, and to have someone who knows so much about horticulture and has so much expertise in these various systems and connections, and but also grounded experience with the work in extension too. It's just been cool, and that's why everybody everywhere is putting your face all over their news things. And she's been on like 12 different university videos, and there's like this thing I look up and there's Alexis with sunflowers on like the splash on the president's email or something. I'm like, fine then,
Right.
cool.
Right time, right place, man. Just
Yeah, we'll go with that. No, it's been fun.
This is just the
Any
episode of cool things that about me. That's what the that's what
so
the title's gonna be.
anything you're looking forward to in the next little bit? And one more reminder of when is that mechanical weed that thing?
You cannot get it right. Mechanical Weed Control Field Day, September 23rd. When we have registration up, we'll start posting that and making that available so you can click and join us.
And that's open to pre-registered members of the public.
Any public technical advisors, if you're someone who helps farmers decide equipment and you want to know what's out there, so we'll have various equipment. We'll have some exhibit, like them coming in and bringing in some cool tractors and from Tillmore and Earth Tools and all these different places to show off some cool new stuff, or just maybe you've never seen a rotary plow work and you want to see it in action. It'll probably be there and you can see that and talk to people who have used it. And yeah, so it'll be good. And there'll also be someone from SARE will be there. It'll probably be Brett, but in theory it might be somebody else. CCD will be there. There'll be also some like educational people, so if you've ever wanted to kind of talk to them, maybe talk about a resource or ask some questions, they'll be there, and some of our specialists will be there as well. So it's pretty much
There will be
anything and
Brett
everything.
and also educational people.
There will be Brett and also educational things, correct.
Brett will be droning on into the
And a
into the
really
abyss.
good Kentucky Proud lunch. And I say Kentucky Proud just means that our Food Connection, University of Kentucky Food Connection, who
Local lunch, baby.
will be providing a lunch from local growers because they're wonderful. And Chef
And it'll
Tanya,
be in the best produce time of year,
yep,
September.
we're gonna nail it. So
I'm excited.
sign up for that. And right now I'm just looking forward to getting, I don't want to say getting through those things because it sounds like it's not positive, but like getting those under my belt because they're just such a big part of what I'm doing, so that I can move on to another item that like I'm excited about working on, which is great. Like to know that you have more cool things that you can work on, like one after the other, is a good thing to know.
Beware the
Keeps you
sophomore
motivated.
slump, though. You hit that first hit, and then people expect you to have more hits.
I mean, who are you talking to? Hit after hit after hit.
Wow.
All I do is win.
Win, no matter what. Wow.
It's gonna be grind. It's fun. It's gonna be everything's fine. Everything's great. It's gonna be great.
Alexis, we really do need to help get you some self esteem and confidence. I don't know what you're gonna.
What
We
is
need to work on
imposter
that.
syndrome? I don't have that.
I got just poster syndrome.
all, all I do is win, but
Damn,
except when I
I like
have to
that.
drive my car by myself and I'm alone with my thoughts, then I am not winning. And if that is also
Okay,
you, felt. If that is also you, dear
I
listener,
actually I like that. I like being
you
alone with
like
my
being alone
thoughts.
with your thoughts. It's because
Yeah,
you're like a deep, thoughtful, kind human, and it's what I love about you, Brett.
yeah, maybe. Maybe I just love my own the sound of my own voice in my head.
Could also be that, and that's fair too.
Voice for
You,
retail,
you three.
face for wholesale.
Well, anything you're excited for, Brett, before as we kind of like finish this up,
Well,
want the
mainly
people to
excited for
know.
all of the leaves to fall off my spring things that are now diseased, and just waiting for the countdown for that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Rake those babies up.
This cycle. I feel like every year now, over the last maybe 5 or 10 years, I've gotten more. I think more in touch with the like cycles of plants and seasonality,
Mhm.
and aside from like the gardening seasonality, but like the natural world and the cultivated landscaped world, and just another round through that is really exciting. I've been enjoying watching all the different pines extend their candles and prepare for new needles. And
Mhm.
we took a little walk around the arboretum a couple weeks ago. At this point, yeah, it was. I'm
Arboretum
just
was nice. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to those things. In addition to just seeing all of this work that you and our other CCD team members have, and me have put into. I guess I am other CCD team member, but I refer to myself in the third person. Um, See all that come to fruition and be able to celebrate 25 years and celebrate this really cool, needed, and grounded field day that the
Mhm.
people went on the Midwest version of it last year were so stoked about. And just to hear them, how excited they are to see that happening in Kentucky and us leading in this area. I'm excited for
Yeah.
that too.
I'm excited to celebrate the people who also got us to this point, like the
Mm,
person, like my predecessor, Christy, and, was in it from the get go. She was the CCD or the New Crops Opportunity Center. And then it was her and Brett, and so to really celebrate and acknowledge the fact that none of this would be happening without, those people is, I think, super special. And, uh, I'm just happy that they're gonna get hopefully a little bit of recognition and also some good food. So
mm,
win there. But awesome. Well, you can find us on Instagram at Horticulture Podcasts. And, we try and post fairly regularly, give you tips. We also share what some of our cool partners that are out there. So if you're wanting, you'll just get some tips and tricks from that. You can also shoot us an email that is in the show notes. And you can leave us 5 stars, and we will have our other co-host back with us, so you don't have to listen to Brett and I just like riff on things that we enjoy if you don't want to anymore, because we can have Ray on to also do that, and Jessica. But Jessica will be back with us at a little bit longer later of a date. Don't worry, she's coming back. We love her so much. And we also love you so much, and we appreciate you guys being here and listening and giving us ideas, sending us emails and saying, you loved it and you want to hear more. We're very grateful to you for being here. So have a great one. Go plant something and, touch some grass. See y'all.